Whenever you're ready.
Yep, let's do it. Hi, everybody. Welcome aboard. Let's get going. Thanks for joining us today.
Excuse me, sorry, Chris. This is Kim. Can I do the Zoom housekeeping stuff right quick?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you. Welcome committee members, liaisons, and members of the public to the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission Homelessness Prevention Committee meeting. We will begin shortly. We are using Zoom with the goal to foster a more inclusive environment and effective meeting. If you would like to make a comment during the meeting, please type "I have a comment" or "I have a question" in the chat, and a message will be sent to the host. Alternatively, you can use the raise hand feature. In an effort of transparency for all those joining this public meeting, whether by phone or by Zoom, we request that you refrain from having side conversations in the chat about the content of the meeting. Again, the chat feature is utilized simply as a tool for you to virtually indicate that you would like, excuse me, to speak in order to help the chair facilitate the meeting. Moving forward, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the State Bar's website at a later date. A friendly reminder that this is a video conference meeting, and please be aware of the surroundings behind you. For those of you joining Zoom on your computer, when on mute, hold down the space bar and you will temporarily unmute. If you excuse me, if you use your phone or dial into this meeting, please be sure your computer microphone is on mute and to avoid audio feedback. While joining via audio computer, it is highly recommended that if an individual loses audio, they can recall and separately using the Zoom conference number. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Okay, this is going to be a fairly short meeting, but let's bang through the agenda and take roll.
Right, great. I'll start with that. Christian Schreiber.
Here.
Banashe Aklagli.
Yes, here.
Amin Al-Saraf.
Here.
Herman DeBose.
Present.
Eric Iskin. Eric Iskin.
I don't see him, Christine.
Okay. James Meeker.
Here.
Richard Reines.
Here.
Kim Savage.
Oh, Kim emailed. She said that she might have power outage issues, so she might not be able to attend.
Okay. Moving to our liaisons, Selena Copeland.
I'm here. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Bonnie Huff. I don't think I saw her.
Yeah, sorry, Bonnie can't attend today.
Okay, Chris Iglesias. I don't believe I saw him either. Okay, then moving to staff, Dwan.
Here.
I'm here, Brady. Brady Dewar.
I am here.
Okay. Erica.
Here.
Great. Dan.
Here.
And joining us for her very first meeting, we have Andrea, our new director of the Office of Access and Inclusion. Andrea, would you like to say hello to the committee?
Sure. Hello. Very excited to be here. I just began in this director role last Monday. And very excited to work with this team and this office to move this important work forward. Just very quickly, I have been working in legal services for a long time, both at Justice and Diversity Center with the San Francisco Bar, and then as pro bono counsel at 2 large law firms, and look forward to being involved in this work from the State Bar platform. So thanks everyone for all of your work on this committee.
All right, thank you. Nice to sort of meet you virtually, and I'm sure I speak for other commissioners that we're looking forward to working with you and appreciate your interest in the commission and the work, and welcome aboard.
Thanks very much. I also look forward to working together.
Okay, moving on to public comment. I'm not sure if anybody would like to make a public comment. I think maybe let's go ahead and just solicit that at the moment. If anybody's on the line that wants to say a few words, feel free. Now's the time.
I think we have somebody from the public. Will we mind unmuting to see if that person would like to make public comments? Vicky, it's a 562 number.
Yeah, I've unmuted their line.
It still shows as muted. Oh wait, now it still shows as muted.
I see it says talking permitted, so they might have muted it themselves. At least that's what I see on my end.
Oh, there. Okay, I think it's unmuted now.
Hey, it's Kim Savage. Sorry.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, it's Kim. Okay, great. Kim's here.
Not a member of the public.
No, a member of the Berkeley Hills crowd without power and a lot of wind.
Oh,
Oh no.
Yeah.
But I'm
yeah,
here.
that's it.
I just don't have any documents before me. I don't have anything open, so I just want to let you guys know that. So I can't really comment on anything before me.
okay. Thank you, Kim, for joining.
Thanks, Kim. Anybody else in the queue or otherwise on the line that you see there, Juan?
I don't see anybody else. I don't know if LAC wants to make any public comments, but otherwise everybody's a committee member or staff.
Okay. Selena, you good or?
Yeah, I don't have a need to make a public comment. I sent some thoughts to Dwan about prioritization based on some survey of our community, or a loose survey of our community, but that's it.
Yeah, Selena shared also. Western Center did some preliminary research on perhaps COVID hotspots for housing work, but I think that might be better served at the committee meeting where we talk about the RFP grants, since the bulk of this is about formula grants.
Yeah, and just for context, we know it's going to be very tough to make those RFP decisions because there's so many great applications. And so I asked some folks at Western Center who've been listening to what's happening on the ground to keep an ear out for hotspots. And so that's the informal survey is Western Center's been gathering people at least once a week to hear about what's happening on the ground with the evictions that are already taking place. So when you do get to RFPs, we at least have heard from Western Center what they think some prioritization should be.
Okay. Then if there are members of the public who later join, we can obviously entertain the idea of a comment later on in the agenda, but let's go ahead and approve the meeting summary from the last meeting, the August 12th meeting. Have you all had an opportunity to review that? And if so, then I will entertain a motion to approve. Anyone? Bueller?
This is Banafshe. I will move to approve.
A second.
Okay.
Kim, second.
Kim seconds, Kim Savage seconds. Can we do a roll call vote?
Yes. Schreiber,
Yes.
Aklagi,
Yes.
Alsaroff,
I'll abstain.
DeVos,
Yes.
Iskin,
Yes.
Meeker,
Yes.
Rhinus,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
and motion passes.
Okay. All right, next on the hit parade, and this is sort of the main meeting, is to review and approve the 2021 homelessness prevention formula application and allocation. Christine, do you want to give some context?
Christine, do you want me to give the review of the review process?
Sure.
So as you'll recall, for the formula grants, this committee had decided at an earlier meeting that the staff would review the applications to see if what the applicants were proposing was qualifying activities. So we do the first level review, and then we elevate to you any issues. And we did this similar to IALTA and EF. We're pleased to say that staff was able to resolve all pending issues, with the exceptions of 2 late applications that I'll turn it over to Christine to talk about in a minute. And I'll just kind of really generally give a brief recap of the activities that were proposed. So the majority of them were really kind of your traditional run-of-the-mill UD work. So we didn't have questions for, I would say, at least 75% of the projects. The other quarter percent, the other 25%, we did have to roll back to ask some of the applicants some clarifying information. It seemed like some applicants did include policy advocacy work. So we have asked those applicants to replace the policy advocacy work with more qualifying activities. If the applicant had decided that they wanted to move forward with that proposal, we would have elevated it to the commission, but they all agreed with staff that because that was a prohibition to the legislation, so they took that piece out. We had also a couple of other applicants, particularly 3 support centers that were proposing activities that at the time seemed not as clearly qualifying. For example, one of the applicants, One Justice, one of the new pieces of their projects for this year was to provide capacity building for QSPs that then provided a homelessness prevention and eviction defense work. It wasn't obvious to us that would be clearly qualifying under the statute. So we gave them an opportunity to either clarify what they were saying, or and then we would elevate it to the committee. But they decided, based on staff's feedback, that they went ahead and revised their application to include kind of more trainings that were clearly qualifying. So that particular project, they are going to be providing pro bono trainings and working with programs that provide pro bono assistance in the area of eviction defense. And so to us, that was more clearly qualifying. So we are not elevating that to your approval today for a closer review. And we had one more a support center that was a kind of in that category of not clearly qualifying, but Dan was able to resolve that. And Dan, since you're on the line, could you give a little bit more background on?
Yeah, sure. We're talking now about, am I on?
Coalition.
Yeah, Coalition of California Welfare Rights Organizations, or CCWRO. They are a support center that provides support in the area of public benefits generally. And their first proposal was a whole portfolio of 6 different kinds of activities, which range from building a brief bank for administrative hearings to providing direct KYR trainings for people who were homeless. Many of these things they had no experience in doing, but many of them were also policy-based or not directly tied to homelessness. They came back with a revision that focused only on providing technical assistance, representation assistance, and co-counsel to QLSPs in benefits cases which have a tenant or a person with a tenancy issue. So they'll be able to screen for that at the intake and focus their services on qualifying activities. The other piece was web-based and then in-person trainings on administrative representation in areas that will ensure income stability. And that was a place where we paused and weren't sure if there was a clear enough connection between those activities and the legislative kind of focus on tenancy and homelessness issues. And Kevin, their executive director, has subsequently provided additional factual information. So that 75% of the people who need benefits are tenants or were tenants before they became homeless. And on that basis, it seems like a very disproportionately intense impact on that population. And on that basis, we thought that this was still a qualifying activity.
Dan, this is Kim. Can I ask a question?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm familiar with the organization from previous reviews and discussions. I don't recall them doing housing work before. Did they talk about that at all?
Yeah. Oh, go. Sorry. Go ahead.
No,
Dan.
go ahead, Juan. You got it.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, Kim, so this is one of the reasons why we went back and we asked them for more clarifying information, because the legislation is clear in that obviously the UD work is qualifying. We had a number of projects, the last round of funding, pitched for what we were calling auxiliary legal services. So it's not completely on point, but they're trying to make the argument that this other type of legal assistance would also, help with homelessness prevention. So last year, the committee did fund a number of projects that did work that wasn't just UD related. The clearest example was public benefits work. As this year, when we looked at that, Brady and I looked at the legislation. The legislation does carve out for a little bit more flexibility and not just kind of traditional UD work. So public benefits would qualify, employment would qualify. But the difference that for this year, what we're asking programs is to at least screen for renters. And if you're providing kind of other tangential support services, if you can at least screen for renters so that there's some nexus to homelessness prevention and to the legislation itself. What's tricky about the support center issue is that, they don't have direct clients as themselves. So it's a little bit more removed than, for instance, an organization that's providing public benefits or employment work that is then able to screen to see the client at a threshold level is a renter and would be providing those additional services. With CCR, WRO, because they, like as you are familiar, Kim, they provide mainly support services in the realm of public benefits. Our original intention was to elevate this with the recommendation of either to not fund or as a closer look. But as Dan was saying, they came back to us with the argument that 75% or more of the clients that would be helped through their advocacy work, are renters. We thought that was a strong enough nexus. So that our staff recommendation, because of that, would be to approve the application.
Okay, so I mean, this year, when I'm talking about that broad, housing, anything that basically helps with housing stability, we interpret that broadly. I didn't know what the language was for last year. Okay, I have to say,
the language was pretty. Kim, the language is pretty much identical from last year's legislation, with just the legislature took out the spend down period, so we don't have to spend it in X amount of time. But the substantive language is identical. The only difference in how we're kind of approaching it this year is that we're also allowing programs to do employment work, public benefits work. We didn't explicitly tell programs last year that they needed to screen for renters. This year, the difference is that we are asking programs, can you screen for renters? So there's just a stronger nexus.
Right. Okay. I get it. Okay. All right. Okay. Sounds good to me. I did like that brief bank idea.
Well,
that could be helpful.
I think once they've got the trainings under their belt and they know what people actually need, that's a good place to go next.
Okay, thank you.
Their first guess was a little overambitious and wasn't a clear nexus. We tightened it up a little bit, and I think we're going to see more of this in the RFP side.
Yeah. So we did include in your meeting materials profile sheets of each of the applications. So they're not the full application, but it's an excerpt of the pieces that we thought were relevant, which is a project abstract and what they're proposing to do. I don't know if there are questions on CCRWO specifically or any of the other projects. We're happy to answer.
This is Jim. I got a question. What amount of money would they get under the formula, and what percentage of the total is that?
So that's hard to say. It's going to depend on after this meeting. If you choose to approve all the staff recommendation, then we would go and run the formula. We couldn't do it until we had this meeting. So because it's kind of like running the IOLTA formula, we're approving at this juncture eligibility, and then staff will then run the formula. So we couldn't tell you right now. It would kind of depend on how many programs you go to approve for funding. But the formula is modified in that, obviously only programs that apply would be qualified. And then there's a minimum amount. So it's not exactly to the IOLTA formula. It's just a modification. Are there any other substantive questions before we talk about the 2 late applications? Chris, did you have any thoughts about the review process or any particular questions?
No, not really. I mean, I think it just bears repeating that this is a very quick process. Staff is working, I think, incredibly hard to sort of get this all out the door and to make this as smooth as possible. And I realize that it has created, additional time commitments on the part of staff as well as all the committee members, just given the volume of work that everybody had before, plus the response to the application process. So I think everybody's working to try to make it as smooth and as fast and to get this money out into the universe as quickly as we can.
Thank you for that, Chris. And I also want to echo Chris's thank you to the committee members. I know we had to add an additional committee meeting and also an additional commission meeting just so that we can get this funding out the doors for January 2021 distribution. So we really appreciate the extra work that everybody's putting forth.
And I'm assuming after Christine, after we talk about these late applications, we will get in more substantively just into what we talked about a little bit on in our various committee meetings, or do you want to save that for our next meeting?
Yeah, I think we can check in, Chris, how everybody's doing. And then we have the December 3rd meeting that's tentatively scheduled now that I'm hoping to get everybody sign off today so that we can send out the calendar outlook.
Okay, Christine, go for it.
Okay, great. So as you would have read from the memo, there was a late application from Affordable Housing Rights Advocates. They reached out to us actually right after attending the convening on September 6th and requested September 16th, which was one day after the due date for the formula application, and had requested an extension. And were notified that we would need to elevate it to the committee to approve. And they completed their application shortly after we released it to them. They're one of our smallest programs that we fund. And our recommendation to this committee is to be flexible and accept this late application. It was only one day after the deadline, and to note that this has been a challenging time, and that this organization was very interested and did attend the convening. And before let me also note that there was another application that I neglected to put in the memo, which was an oversight, which was Disability Rights Legal Center. So this program actually submitted their formula application on October 9th, which was the due date for the RFP application. And I inquired to them whether they meant to submit the RFP application. And they had indicated that they had must have confused the dates. They didn't request an extension. They hadn't reached out to us before, but they did ultimately submit an RFP application. Since this was 3 weeks later, over 3 weeks past the due date, and they had never reached out to us about needing an extension, the staff recommendation is not to accept their late application. And so I'll open it up to back to the committee for questions.
Do we need to actually take a vote on this?
So we need to take a vote on, we included in the meeting materials, the list of, that was the attachment that Christine sent out yesterday, the list of staff recommendation, and that includes affordable housing advocates, but does not include DREDF. That was the
DRLC.
I'm sorry, DRLC. That was the staff recommendation would be to not. So we just need to vote on that list. If you agree with that list, or if you want to approve or not approve either affordable, we would modify that list.
So I guess then, just as a practical matter, let's just ask, I'll poll the members of the committee who are on this call. Does anybody have a problem or want to discuss the late applications? Everybody good?
Question?
Go ahead, Herman.
Is my understanding one asked for an extension and the other one didn't, and the one that didn't ask for an extension will not be considered?
That is staff's recommendation.
Well, in addition to not just that they did not ask for an extension, but that it was much later. With affordable housing advocates, like Christine said, it was the day after, or it was shortly after that they reached out to us and realized that they didn't realize the deadline. With the other organization, it's a little unclear why they didn't submit it until the day the RFP was due, which was 3 weeks later.
Oh, so they submitted 3 weeks after the deadline?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And Christine, do you know why, did they provide a reasoning why it was so late?
They just, the response was the development team must have mixed up the dates.
So they submitted their RFP on the date when the statutory allotment application was due, right? The IOLTA, yeah. Is that right?
They submitted their formula application the day the RFP was due, which was 3 weeks later.
And then they did.
Okay, so they just totally flipped the two on when they were due.
When did the RFP come in?
Yeah, when did the RFP come in?
The RFP came in that date. I informed them that my question to them was, did you intend to submit an RFP application? And so they asked if they could still submit an RFP application, and it was the due date. And I said, yes, today's the due date by 5 p.m. And they did submit an RFP application.
And my understanding is the formula and the RFP are very similar.
They are very similar.
So the RFP was timely, but the formula grant was not. Is that correct?
Yes, but as Christine was saying, she when she reached out to them, because it was odd that it was a formula application that came in, then they submitted an RFP. So we were unclear whether they had originally intended to submit an RFP or was once they were alerted that the formula was late, then they submitted both of them. That's a little unclear to us.
Don, could you say that again?
So when Christine reached out to them, because it was odd that formula application was coming in on the due date of the RFP application. And at that time, they had not submitted an RFP yet. And so then they went and submitted an RFP, but we don't know if they had all along intended to submit an RFP or not, or it was once Christine had reached out to them. That we just don't know. But they are very similar applications, substantively.
So is staff recommending just acknowledge the application that was timely submitted and not the other?
Well, so the other RFP application, we are reviewing it because it was timely, so that's not an issue.
Right.
Just before you is whether you approve staff's recommendation of not approving, not taking the application or not.
Yeah. Okay.
And just to be clear, well, first of all, any other questions, comments?
I have one question.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Where are they located? I'm asking this from the rural and underrepresented.
Oh, DRLC is in Los Angeles.
And Christine, do you know off the top of your head if they received a formula grant before? Like, is this going to disrupt services?
No, I believe they did not receive the homelessness prevention last year. I do want to just quick double check that as I say it.
Was the question answered as to where they're located? I didn't.
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles.
Okay.
And I don't know if they've got one of these grants, but I know that they have stumbled over our processes more than once in the past.
Are they a productive organization?
They are. They provide really excellent services, and they don't have, to their credit, as far as my knowledge, a pattern of being late. So, you know, if the staff recommendation is not to approve it, but it's not as strong if the committee chooses to approve the, you know. We went back and forth with this recommendation because it was just so late and they didn't appear to really provide a great reasoning, and that we were trying to kind of, you know, have more firm boundaries with programs, and so that's why we landed. But I think we did go back and forth, so we would understand if the committee wanted to accept their application.
And just confirming that they did not receive an HP formula grant in 2019, and they did not receive an HP RFP in 2020. So this would not be.
Did they apply?
That I'm not sure if they applied.
Yeah, okay.
So, so Juan, they are or are not eligible for formula funding.
They didn't. We don't know if they didn't apply last year, but they did not receive it didn't appear from what Christine just reported, formula funding last year or RFP.
No, but for this round, for the 23 million or whatever, they're not getting funding out of that.
You mean for the existing HP money or the new money?
New money.
So this is what you're deciding now, is the new money.
The activities are qualified. The question
is
the
activities, there's no question. It's clearly qualifying the activities. It's just a matter of lateness at this point.
I see.
Oh, could I just confirm they did not ask for an extension? They submitted late, and their reasoning was it was administrative confusion, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But Christine, correct me if I'm wrong, did explain to them that the staff does not have authority to accept an application late, that we'd have to check with that's usually the protocol. Staff doesn't have that authority, so we have to elevate it to you to decide.
So Christine,
I did not ask them if they were requesting an extension to submit.
You did not ask them that? Yeah.
No, because I was asking them if they intended to submit an RFP.
Herman? Okay. So is there a will among the committee to allow this to go through, or is the view that we want to sort of abide the deadline a little bit more strictly?
I believe Rich has a comment.
Go ahead, Rich.
Chris, in response to your question too, it seems to me the issue before us isn't the quality of the program or its geographical reach, but rather whether or not when we set a deadline, we mean what we say, and if there are justifiable reasons for tardiness, whether or not we'll consider those and approve a late filing. If we get into the substantive nature of the late applicant, I think we are far afield from where we ought to be. So to me, the question is whether or not the reasons for being late are reasonable and justifiable for both of these applicants. And that's to be amplified by the number of days they were late. And it sounds to me from staff's review of this that affordable housing was very close to the date of filing, and that their reasons for being late were justifiable, whereas the DRC, or whatever the initials are for the second one we're considering, was considerably late, and the reasons don't seem to be justified. That's the distinction to me.
This is Kim. I agree with Rich completely.
Yeah, that you captured it beautifully, Rich. The other thing that we should note is that, you know, when we release anything, an application, a due date for reporting, it's not just the one time that we notify programs. There are several reminder emails that come out from our office. And it's not just once. I believe for this particular grant, there are at least 3 emails to remind programs to submit the application.
This is Banafsha. Once again, Rich, you've captured it beautifully. And thank you for that additional information, Dwan, that they have received more than one notification on the timing. I think that makes a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm troubled by the fact that they didn't address their confusion once they acknowledged it as quickly as possible. I can get the confusion part, but not like cleaning up the error as quickly as possible, even if it meant pulling several all-nighters.
Yeah, Kim, that's the piece that also troubled us a little bit, which stood in really stark contrast to affordable rights advocates when as soon as they realized, they really like reached out several times and tried to, you know, when can we submit, what I'm submitting, and they did it like it was quick, like very quick to put together. But with that said, we do, you know, we understand that they provide really amazing services. They're not typically a program that has trouble submitting things. So this is definitely one that we went back and forth on the staff recommendation.
So what do you guys need from us, as
I
was asking?
I saw somebody wanted to make a comment, but I didn't.
Brady.
Brady, go ahead.
So I was just going to point out that, and again, none of this is binding, but certainly something to consider. We don't have any regulations or rules on tardiness in this context, but we do in the audit context where you guys have discretion, but only on a showing of extraordinary circumstances. So, you know, you may or may not want to apply that, but you know, under what we've done there, this wouldn't be extraordinary circumstances given the time and the lack of a real, you know, compelling excuse. And the other thing I'd point out, and I think you guys discussed it, is if you're torn between funding important work and following the rules, you might be able to do both just because they have turned in the RFP, which is, you know.
Right.
Well, and that was, I appreciate that point. That was going to be what I was going to say. Although I guess the alternative way to look at it is that it also demonstrates, you know, it demonstrates that they sort of approached both processes with an identical mindset, which the goal was to actually not do that. So can I just make or ask a clarifying question? If we approve the staff recommendation as drafted right now, then they would not be approved and the other one would be approved. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. The list includes affordable housing advocates, but not the other program.
Yeah, the other program is included, so it would be.
Oh, it is included. I'm sorry, my mistake. So we'd have to make an amendment to that list. I apologize.
So then, if there's nothing that anybody else needs to learn about these applications, the first thing I'll do is sort of ask the group: does anybody want to make an amendment to reflect that the staff recommendation not fund the DRCL? Is that right, Dan?
DRLC.
Oh, sorry. And to remove them from the list. Okay.
Are you looking for a motion?
Yeah,
and if you are, I'll move to adopt the staff recommendation on. Are we going to take them one at a time?
I think we need to, don't we? Because
I thought that would be my suggestion. Let's take the disability DRLC as a motion that you suggested, Chris.
Yeah,
and then vote on the other one.
Right. So let's do this just one at a time. So the first thing would be to adopt the staff recommendation of DRLC to not approve based on the tardiness, the faculty justification for their application. So that's vote number one. We have a motion from Bonapshé. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Eric, okay. Let's do a roll call vote.
Schreiber,
Yes.
Aklagi,
Yes.
Alsaroff,
Yes.
DeBose,
Yes.
Iskin,
Yes.
Meeker,
Yes.
Rhinus,
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Motion passes. Okay, do we next?
Yes, and then now can we vote on the spreadsheet and then with the amendment that we're taking out DRLC to find the other programs eligible?
Right. So the motion that I will be looking for here is a motion to approve the list having been amended by the prior vote, but in all other respects, the list that has been presented for the removal of DRLC.
So moved.
Richard Rhinus. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Jim Meeker seconds. Let's roll call it.
All right, Schreiber,
Yes.
Aklagi,
Yes.
Alsaroff,
Yes.
DeBose,
Yes.
Iskin,
Yes.
Meeker,
Yes.
Rhinus,
Yes.
and Savage.
I'll abstain. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that, go ahead, Christine.
Oh, sorry, motion passes.
Motion passes. So I think that takes care of our business for this meeting.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I did just want to sort of just check in with the group, and I'll just share a very quick preliminary thought about the meetings that everybody's participated in reviewing the first set of, or the first application. We had an interesting conversation. I thought Jim, as usual, had lots of sort of insightful hypotheticals, and it was helpful to hear from Juan about how the other meetings had gone as well. But I don't know if there's a thread, Juan, having attended multiple meetings that you wanted to share with the group or anything like that.
Yeah. So I had the benefit of sitting in on 3 of the 4 working group meetings, and then staff, we did have a pretty long meeting to kind of debrief to see what was working, what was not working. And we have to say that the process itself, we found was really useful for the working group and the committee members. We really, the level of discussion we felt like with the scoring rubric really honed in on, really led to really kind of robust conversations that felt like it was being grounded in some objective factors. So we appreciated that we had a rubric, and we hope that you have all appreciated having the rubric as a starting point for discussion. I thought that the conversation is just really excellent, and every working group kind of had a different take on that, which was great on the particular project. So I think from a staff side, we were really pleased, and I guess I'm curious to hear from the commissioners if your feedback from this is the first time that you've kind of reviewed RFP applications using a rubric and splitting up into working groups like this, at least for HP/BAIT grant type projects.
Well, I'll share my experience, at least in the academic realm, and I've usually found these things pretty useful. They get better with subsequent iterations. Usually the first iteration or two, it's a little rough and people have different ideas, but as you go along, usually by the 3rd, 4th, 5th iteration, they become a lot easier to use and a lot more straightforward.
So, Juan, if I could, but maybe others don't, that in our group, we we had some robust discussion around at least 3 of the dimensions. One was worth 10 points, but still attracted a lot of discussion, and that was, how do you rate organizations that don't provide services to immigrants that are LSC funded? And we had one, for example, I guess we're all doing the same one. This is Central California Legal Services, and they did not provide, but they claimed they referred to other organizations, and we had a split of view about how to rate that one. I thought it was a 0 because they were not devoting any project monies to immigrant services. Other people thought because they made some referrals, we should give them some points. So that's one where maybe we would benefit from some uniform guidance. We also had a sort of split about how to rate the biggest category, sort of whether the project was innovative and served underserved communities. I tended to put more emphasis on the innovative piece. You know, was it new? Was it interesting? Was it something we hadn't thought of, hadn't seen before, as opposed to kind of standard eviction defense kind of stuff? But others had a different view and thought that even kind of plain vanilla eviction defense being rendered for an underserved area was important and should go to sort of the full amount of points. So that was another area of discussion. And then the third, the organizational capacity, that one I just felt sort of unable to really rate without a lot of staff input. You know, input about sort of the experience of the organization, how good they are, how reliable they are. It was very difficult for me to kind of glean that from just kind of reading a one-off application. So those were some things that came out of our meeting.
Yeah.
One of the
Eric,
things,
sorry, go ahead, Herman, I'm sorry.
One of the things that came out of our discussion was the issue of rural and underserved communities. Are we focusing on rural? Are we focusing on underserved communities? Are we focusing on both? If one does not appear to be rural, do they still qualify? Because we were at one point, we said, well, we'll give a portion for rural, we'll give a portion for underserved, and then we'll give a total if both are there. And so we went back, and at least I went back and forth on that. What does that really mean? Are we specifically focusing on rural?
Yeah.
Are we focusing on underserved communities? Because if a program is in Los Angeles, it's not rural.
But the way it's the rubric is written for that particular item, Herman, is an or. So you know, if they served rural, then I'm assuming they got. I hope we're in agreement that they would get the full points. The or of underserved, I think that's a more scaled version. So if they were not serving rural, but they were carving out a particularly underserved group, then you would need to, you know, decide on a scale 1 to 10 how underserved or how needy that particular underserved group is.
So if it's a specific underserved group, but it's not rural, then we would give them 5 points instead of.
No, then I think it's up to your discretion for you to decide how underserved that group, how warranted it would be for a 5 or a 10.
Okay, the other discussion we had was in regards to the organization itself, is that if they were working with a particular organization but did not have a sub-grant with that organization, why would that other organization buy in if they aren't getting any resources?
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a discussion that at least that if we're going to give them points for that, but they don't have a sub-grant with that other organization, should they get the full points for that? Because the other organization really doesn't have a buy-in. It's just like a handshake. Okay, I'll do this, but there's nothing there.
And that concern was shared with every working group, Herman. You know, that when we met as a staff, all the working groups had that concern for this particular project that we chose to do calibration on. So that is it's Dan's group that has the specific project. So Dan is actually going to roll back and ask for some clarification.
So when we look at the other remaining applications, if Agency X does not have a sub-grant with the agency that they say they're going to collaborate with, should we reduce points?
Well, we didn't make it as a requirement, but I would say that goes to kind of the strength of their application as a whole, and whether you want to, you know, I would put it in the 30 whether you want to reduce points or give them the full 30 because of that, because it wasn't a requirement to have a sub-grant. We encourage collaboration and obviously, but they weren't required to.
But if they had a sub-grant, that would strengthen their application as compared to not having a sub-grant.
I think that's a question that you have to decide. We weren't explicit with that when we drafted the RFP and what we communicated to programs. So that's within your discretion.
Can I get some feedback from my colleagues so that there's some consistency?
I believe Rich has his hand up.
Yeah, Herman, we wrestled with this issue a lot. And when I looked at the budget, it helped me because I thought, well, if the full-time equivalents or the working parties necessary to fulfill the grant application are coming from the grant recipient only, then not having a sharing arrangement on the funds makes more sense. Mm-hmm. But if the reliance on the sub-grantee or the organization with whom they're working would require that agency to add staff or to mm-hmm. incur expense, then it seems to me it's a problem. Mm-hmm. And I would deduct points.
Okay. One other place where I found a little bit of support was that although there's no sub-grant, there is a provision to pay a little bit of rent. So they are at least accounting for a little bit of a footprint.
Mm-hmm. And can I address, Eric, thank you for summarizing kind of the three main areas of concern for your working group. The category of whether the project serves undocumented immigrants. I know that there was kind of various opinions on that depending on what working group was reviewing the application. And we're about to send out, the staff is going to send out a proposal for everybody in this committee to use kind of a scaling for that. For instance, and we're still trying to finalize firm up what that scaling would mean. But for example, if a project was proposing to provide, say, information and brief services, then they would get perhaps 2 or 3 points. But if they were providing full scope representation to undocumented immigrants, they would get a full 10 points. And if they were providing through a sub-grant, full scope, middle of the road, a 5 or 6. So some type of scaling to give you some guidance on how to address that. And so there will be some uniformity on that particular category.
This is Banafshe.
Does providing through a sub-grant mean kind of what we saw with Central California, just sort of a referral, or does it mean allocating some project money to the?
So our pitch to the committee would be that because CCLS seems like they're providing not just referral, but brief information. So that's to us some level of services, so that our pitch would be to provide them with maybe perhaps 2 or 3 points. That it wouldn't be 0 because there's some level of assistance, right? It's not full scope representation, but they are providing something. Now, if they don't have any money towards a sub-grant, but if they are open to providing some money through sub-grant that would then provide full scope representation, we would then recommend that the committee would give them 5 or 6 points. And then this is not the case because they're LSC funded, but they can't provide services to undocumented immigrants. But if there was a project that, was providing full scope representation to undocumented immigrants, that we were proposing full 10 points for that category. So that there's just some scaling. So it's not all or nothing. I don't know if that sounds like would that be helpful? And is that an approach this committee would like to take? You don't have to take a formal vote. We can just send it out as an email. But is that something that seems helpful?
Makes sense to me.
Can I ask Jim a question in regards to evaluation? Jim, were you comfortable with their evaluation of their project?
Well, when I went through it, my comments were, one is that I thought it was interesting that they mentioned another grant from Zuckerberg where they were developing metrics, which I thought was interesting, but they didn't expand on how would they apply it, what they were, and they provided no money in the budget for evaluation. Okay. Given that, I rated them fairly lowly on evaluation.
So when we look at the budget, so we should look for resources you think that indicate something related to evaluation?
For me, unless they give a detailed discussion on how they're going to do it, if they don't fund anything, that dings them. I'm not going to give them full points unless unless, let's say, if they would have fully expanded the Zuckerberg metrics, whatever those were, and saying this is how our staff are going to apply the Zuckerberg metrics in terms of our evaluation, I would have scored them highly. But they didn't. They just threw it out and didn't expand.
Yeah.
But Herman and Jim, and I think I did remind Jim on our call that the vast majority of programs don't have carved out money for evaluations, because a lot of these programs, you know, evaluation is a luxury, whether that's right or wrong. It is a luxury for a lot of programs. And so the bulk of their costs, if not all of it, is going to providing the services.
Yeah, but I mean,
how do we know if it works then?
Yeah.
Well, they have to provide
it. How do you know it works?
Well, we have reporting requirements.
Yeah, but I think it isn't. It's money is part of it, but I think I agree with Jim. I mean, I had the exact same reaction. I thought their discussion of evaluation was just way too general. I had no idea how they were actually going to apply this metric that they vaguely alluded to. So I had a similar reaction.
The criteria is ability to measure and evaluate the benefits and outcomes of the project activities. And if they don't elaborate on that, what do we do?
Well, Kim, I see you clamoring perhaps. Do you want to say something?
Well, it's
me.
Yeah. Am I misinterpreting the yellow square around your icon? Okay, I must be. Go ahead, Jim. I'll follow up on your comments.
But Christian, I'm clamoring a bit. This is Banafsha, so you can go and then I'll go. Yeah.
So I was just saying that I was looking for more than just the mere process evaluation that most of these organizations do. We represented Y number of clients, we had X number of successful outcomes, W number of failure outcomes or whatever. Not looking at something a little bit more nuanced on, geez, if we would have changed this approach or that approach, we could have improved it, or we might have improved it, or we had only a minimal attendance to our clinics. And if we would have done something else or changed the language options available, we could have expanded the number of people in the clinics. Something more than just, we got a certain amount of money, we represented a Y amount of clients, who we had W kind of outcomes. That to me is not very successful evaluation. That's just a process. So I'm looking for something a little bit more. They don't have to put a lot of budget. I realize most of them don't. Last time I went through the bank grants, I think out of the 10 proposals I looked at, only 2 allocated any money whatsoever. But several of them did allocate staff time, saying that they were going to do different things with the data that they gathered. That's at least something more than process.
Banafsha, you want to go?
I can go after you. Go ahead, Christian.
Well, no, I'm happy to defer. And then Amin, do you also have your hand raised? Okay, so go ahead, Banafsha, and then Amin, and then I'll pick it up.
Richard is also on the queue.
Sorry, Rich.
So I think, thank you. I think that what Jim is speaking to, and Eric and Herman, is impact, right? So what's ultimately the measurable result, right? What's the impact of these funds going to this organization, doing that work, and what do we see? But I think it really needs to be balanced with what Dwan is speaking to, which is, you know, we've talked about this multiple times. These organizations are literally drinking from the fire hose. So how do we have them show impact and have them do the work that they need to do, rather than potentially bogging them down with stuff? So I mean, that was our conversation in our working group with Herman and Elizabeth. You know, we are looking for impact with these funds, because we're hoping to go and receive more funds for all that which is coming before us, the cascade that's before us. So that's on that point. But to answer the initial question, how are these working groups going, and what do we think about the rubrics? I think it's, I'm personally really happy that we have this. It's a great step forward. Again, this is harking to what Jim was saying in terms of iterations, and that gets better than last year. And our coming together in these smaller working groups allows for more discussion, and then it allows for deeper thinking. And what I
really was present to when I received the email from the staff is how much thinking and just how much thoughtfulness has gone into this process so that it is meaningful. And so I don't think I just want to acknowledge all the work that's gone into it. And I think that what's going to come from the grant making this year is going to be, I think we're going to see a lot of power in these funds. And of course, you know, these funds aren't going to make the ultimate difference, but it gets us in that process and it gets us in that conversation. So that's what I have. Back to you, Christian.
Go ahead, Amin.
Okay, I just wanted to address the evaluation question briefly because Eric and I had a, I think our discussion was robust, and I apologize, my dog is barking, so there's not much I can do about that. But you know, I took a look at what was on, I guess, page 14 of in answer to describe how the project goals will be met. And I thought it actually was fairly innovative how they wanted to evaluate the outcomes or the goals of the project, where they're talking about, you know, addressing the raising of defenses in UD matters, favorable settlement terms, reduction of client stress anxiety, providing longer term housing stability for the client. And I think there's some, you know, I think I'm not going to profess to have a lot of experience in assessing and doing these evaluations myself from at the ground level, but I do think that there's a certain level of, you know, you're not going to know how to evaluate certain things until you get into the process and you're actually doing it. I think there are certain metrics obviously that are clear, but I thought it was interesting that they're thinking about these kinds of different ways of assessing what the goals are and how successful they may or may not be. And I haven't looked through the other projects. I'm not sure how this measures up to the other ones. So this might be a situation where we have to do sort of a comparative analysis of what the different evaluations are. But I did think, you know, I had a disagreement. I don't know if other people read that differently and felt not as strongly about that particular, you know, description that they had. But that was my view.
I would just like to add one comment to the impact. I would agree if we looked at impact broadly. I think it's just as important if a program finds a particular approach that does not work, is an important finding, as well as an approach that does work, especially in informing other programs not to pursue that particular line of work if it doesn't work. So I think impact, if we look at it broadly, positive as well as negative, I think those are important findings. I think programs tend to want to only report things that work well and not report things that don't.
Rich
has his hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the statutory mandate we have is for pre-eviction and eviction work, not post-eviction. And evaluation in my 30 years of grant making is always the toughest piece of this puzzle. And in some respects, it is one of the most important. If you read Matthew Desmond, you know that eviction ultimately leads to homelessness. And the question that I would have, given that we're going to see an avalanche of eviction defense work, is how much homelessness is being prevented by the eviction work done by our grantees. But I don't see it in the budget. I don't see it in the statutory mandate. And I'd sure love to find a source, maybe Zuckerberg, to help all of our QLSPs evaluate, do the back end of this package. But I don't see it in our mandate. I don't know that we really it would be appropriate for us to ask them to dedicate resources that are slim to begin with to the follow-up process here.
But Rich, I hear what you're saying, but we put evaluation in the rubric. So, I mean, I would have been happy to say, fine, if it's too much of a burden, let's just not even put it in the rubric, but it's in the rubric. So that means we have to evaluate it.
Well, I'd add to that, Eric, I think that the word's broad. To understand how many people who have avoided eviction or have unfortunately been evicted end up in homelessness would take years of study, perhaps. And I'm thinking more in the long term than in the short term. So I don't think we ought to eliminate evaluation from our considerations of whether or not a project is worthy. But what that really means in the end, I don't know. I'm going to say it comes up short of what might be very useful.
Don, may I ask you a question? In the end, when all of these projects are done, do we have to report to somebody that it was a success?
Yes.
Or failure? Well, then,
Yeah, so I was just,
if you don't have a consistent evaluation program within the process, how do you report to whoever we have to report to say, yes, this project was a success? I mean, do we have established goals and objectives?
yes. So I was just going to ask Chris if I can make a comment just about evaluations generally. So our grant does require grantees submit an evaluation report for us, and it's a standard report so that we can aggregate the data and report it to the legislature. Last year, I think it was designed a bit incorrectly, and we're trying to go back and self-correct a little bit. And that the existing HP grant right now, not the new money, but the existing project, we only required for an evaluation at the end of the project, but we've already been asked by the legislature for some preliminary numbers. So Christine and I have sent out a survey to programs to see, are they willing to aggregate some data for us midstream so that we can aggregate that and present it to the commission as well as the legislature. And the community has said pretty unanimously that they can do that. They just can't provide a mid-juncture, a mid-year report with qualitative like stories, but they can provide us numbers. How many, in terms of outcomes. We have a similar evaluation for the new project, and we designed it on purpose for it to be pretty identical so that we can aggregate the data from both the existing project and the new project and compile that together. But this is definitely an area that we've looked to. We've worked with both Judicial Council and LACT to look at kind of those data points to make sure that those are the data points that at the end of the day, when we go to aggregate, will be kind of our strongest selling points to the legislature. So we, there are limitations to data collection in that we're collecting for outcomes right when the case is closed. So we're not following, say, what's happening with the client 6 months out, a year out, 5 years out. We understand that that's kind of the gold standard in evaluation, but that's very costly to require our programs to do. So at this juncture, we have them report on when the case is closed. There's substantial kind of administrative money for this for the existing funding. We have about $1.5 million. So evaluation is definitely something that like LAC, Judicial Council, and the State Bar is going to be talking about to see what more we can do. So I want everybody to be rest assured, even if the project plans for some of these projects come up a little bit short, we have a plan in order to collect the data so that we can report out in the aggregate.
But then for me, for consistency, how do you want us to look at their evaluation, whatever they put forth? I mean, because
it's consistency, but I do think it's going to be a little bit. It's a little bit subjective, Herman, in terms of that category, as of most of our categories. So one person may feel like this project proposal was good, and another person may feel that's the subjective piece of it. What we will do as staff, because not all the committee members are going to be reviewing all 40 something applications, the staff will be that equalizer, and that we are actually going through and reviewing all the applications, and then we'll report back into the working groups. And I think I've said this to Jim before, having had the benefit of reviewing not just the project proposals for HP, but for bank grants, for partnership grants as well. This is a very average, to me, evaluation. And I know that Jim is pushing programs to do more. And I think we also want programs to do more, but the reality of it is that most programs are not just in that place right now. And perhaps this is a conversation that we should elevate to the larger commission, to maybe perhaps resurrect the reboot committee, because Jim, as a representative of the commission, and Corey as well, that were on the reboot committee, they provided so much technical assistance to programs. And we as a community, over several years have really beefed up the reporting requirements. And that's why we have our main in economics reporting right now. But it's definitely an area that we could do so much more. Jim was so helpful the last time we issued the impact report in 2019, where we looked at a very very a sliver of all our reporting data, and Jim was able to help us calculate the number in that instance of DV restraining orders to kind of a monetary value of the cost savings. Perhaps we can do that with housing, and I think that's just a larger conversation. But in terms of I think today, though, because we should save pretty much the bulk of the substantive for our December 3rd meeting and our working group meeting, I think Chris and I just wanted to get a sense of, process-wise.
Yeah,
I know we've already gone down a lot to substance, but that's where we wanted to check in on in terms of process.
And
we
Juan,
save the substance for December 3rd.
Juan, can I just clarify something? So will there be a document that reviewers, and I don't know if anybody else is seeing Juan, she's like a silent movie star right now. So I wasn't sure if you were still talking, but will there be a document that's sent to committee members here that's going to, I guess, collect the threads that we've been talking about, that will give us sort of a guidance as to how to work particular things? Like
Yes.
Okay. So
that's what we're working on now. We just wanted to see if there was any preliminary process that we should build into it. But literally, Dan sent me a document of how to itemize that one category last night. We will integrate that out. You will receive that today or tomorrow. And assuming that you sign off on that, then all the committees, all the working groups will be then left to review based on that modified. Yes.
Okay, great. So will it be operating with a shared set of understanding?
Yes.
And just I appreciate the conversation and the sort of conversations people had in their working groups, as well as that we've raised here. Just by way of example, in our group, Jim, I sort of read that category to say, is this service capable of being measured? And had originally sort of scored it more highly because, in my estimation, it was certainly capable of being measured, which is what I think the literal sort of call out on the category is. And Jim, makes, I think, a very good point. I will also just, my last point before we adjourn is just that on the measurement point, both for these grants and just more generally about the impact of this work, I think we share a value, which is that just because something can be measured doesn't mean it should be measured. And just because something can be measured doesn't mean the measurement actually matters. So it's always important to keep those things in mind. And I think Jim and the work of the Reboot Committee did sort of understand that there was a qualitative nature, and there's a lot of nuance. If you're helping the head of a household, are you serving one person or the full house, et cetera, et cetera. So these are all things that I think should guide our work, but they do make it more difficult, or at least more complex. So unless there's anything else anybody wants to talk about before we adjourn, I think we've accomplished what we needed to accomplish.
Chris, can I just ask one more before we adjourn? That December 3rd meeting, I had proposed a December 3rd. I know I received responses from half the group. Does that date work for everyone? Because then we can go and set up a calendar invite so that you all have it in your calendar.
Yeah.
Now I can't remember if I was among those who responded.
9 to 1, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
December 3rd, 9 to 1.
Sure.
Works for me.
Okay. I know it works for Bonachet. Chris, did it work for you? I don't think I got a response.
I currently have a deposition, but I can try to kick that. I don't want to take
No, do you want us to try to send out another doodle? Are you sure?
Yeah, I'd rather not do the deposition. So.
Okay. Okay.
This is being recorded, Christian.
Don't know which case I'm talking about.
Bono publico.
Yeah, so anyway, thanks everybody. I think that's it. We're good. So thank you, everybody. Staff, welcome again. And we shall see all of you in a couple weeks. And if you haven't voted.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Second.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yeah.